The wokest campaign to cancel Joe Rogan is not going particularly well, at the very least not this time around. It started like so many wokest attacks do, with a millionaire superstar leading the charge. You know, the average man, Neil Young, who gave Spotify an ultimatum: you can either have Joe Rogan or Young, not both. To which Spotify responded with, "Goodbye then." Which, I cannot lie, was certainly a rather satisfying moment, but make no mistake, there are no true heroes in this equation. Spotify themselves did not tell Neil to ride off into the sunset mounted upon a particularly large and viciously barbed cast iron dildo out of any respect for free speech or out of any principles of a free and open society. They did so because Joe Rogan is worth a hell of a lot more to them than damn near any number of Neil Youngs. As for Joe Rogan himself, he is definitely the closest to good in this equation, but he himself did sell out for $100 million and sat quietly by as Spotify yeeted some 40 of his podcast episodes. But again, he is by far the closest to the ideal here, and besides, he earned himself a lot of sympathy points with me personally when he got into a bit of a row with Ethan Klein, who criticized Joe Rogan for not being healthy enough to be able to have an opinion on COVID, and yet, for some reason, I think I'll take health advice from the person who's 50 and yet still looks like a Spartan warrior king, rather than the YouTuber who looks like the bastard love child of a chocolate factory and a train wreck. But hey, that's just me. As for Neil Young, I know absolutely nothing about this person beyond the fact that he appears to be a massive brainlet, in that he's totally not for censorship or anything. In fact, he has been a strident opponent of censorship. Except, of course, private companies can do whatever they want. Of course. Because censorship is not when you try to force a company to remove somebody else. That's just choice, don't you know? Aha, yeah, of course. Then there's Johnny Mitchell, who also had her music pulled. I know nothing about this person either, beyond the fact that she looks like a bulldog, and she has the good old-fashioned conservative pride flag around her neck, which tells me pretty much all I need to know about her. And Nils Lofgren, whom, I have it on good authority, has Swedish blood running through his veins. And that is frankly all I need to dismiss the man as an absolute monkey, because I am a Norwegian, and that's just how we treat Swedes by and large. Furthermore, I believe she quit due to a letter signed by nearly 300 doctors, which turns out to be signed by veterinarian, dentists, and podcast hosts. You know, leading medical experts, much like aforementioned Ethan Klein, I guess. As for Joe Rogan himself, again, he's imperfect, but he's the closest to the ideal here, and he put out a response video apologizing to Spotify for causing the trouble, which smells an awful lot like me. Like, his handler came on and said, right, so, Spotify needs you to make this go away, and they did pay you an awful lot of money, so do it. And he did. And he did bring up some very good points whilst he was doing it as well. Amongst others, that misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact. That's a fantastic point, because the reason why people are trying to yeet Joe Rogan is because he had a doctor on, an actual doctor, not a veterinarian or a podcast host, who was very skeptical towards the... I can't say that on YouTube. There's another point right there. I can't even really say the thing that he's being attempted to be heated for, but let's just say that it has to do with recent widespread medical efforts. There you go, that should be safe enough, I hope. And just a short while ago are now accepted as fact, because he was stating misinformation, dangerous misinformation. But what's really dangerous is calling anything misinformation right now, where the only thing that separates a conspiracy theory from goddamn truth is time. And that's where we are now. As for Spotify itself, it did have a pretty nasty dip in shares after a bunch of artists were leaving, and probably a lot of people expected a lot more artists to up and yeet themselves as well, but after realizing that this was an awful lot of money that they were signing away, the flow seems to have stopped, and in fact the stocks have rebounded quite drastically. As usual, we have here the scenario where the wokest mob is on the side of the millionaire superstars living in a mansion somewhere, whereas the common everyday man, the average people, they're on the side of Joe Rogan. Weird indeed. Joe Rogan himself has of course been under fire quite frequently for being white. Basically, let's call it for what it is here. The problem with Joe Rogan and white boys, because you see, whilst they're arguing about the whole COVID thing now, but have we forgotten that Joe Rogan is a white supremacist as well? It's become the new fascist, another insulting term that means absolutely nothing, that nobody can really define, and is simply thrown away because it still has some kind of clout in at least some circles somewhere. As for Spotify itself, you see, Spotify won't censor anyone. No. CEO, we have principles here. We're not going to censor Joe Rogan for having people on his podcast. That would be ridiculous. It would be as insane as censoring I don't know, a rap song. That would be pretty ridiculous. What about removing all ads for a company and information says because we don't particularly like them? That would be equally insane, right? Or what about another rather famous podcaster? We can't censor podcasters because that would be terrible, right? Spotify, right? And of course, the 40-odd episodes that disappeared rather quietly. Yes. There are no true heroes in this equation, and it just goes to show that the only way a conservative, because I do consider Joe Rogan to be pretty conservative, has any chance to stand up against the cancel culture mob is to be so goddamn valuable that he can't be cancelled. And allow me to just defend here a little bit, because I've been aggressive on this point. Joe Rogan, is he a sellout? Yes, he is. But hey, to some degree, so am I. Everyone is. Anyone who does YouTube is a sellout to some degree because we go on a platform that has very stringent English requirements, restrictions was the word I was looking for. Sometimes my brain just stops and I speak Norwegian instead inside of my head. Anywho, and for $100 million, here's the thing, I firmly believe that even the most principled man in the universe has got a price tag. Now, it might be a very high price tag. I hope it's going to be a very high price tag. I flatter myself to think that my price tag is fairly high, but $100 million? I had to consider it. I cannot lie. $100 million. You wouldn't have to work a day more in your life, nor probably will your children have to. Depending upon how rapid the inflation goes, I do suppose. You cannot simply dismiss that kind of a quantity of cash. You just can't. And if 40 out of 1,100 plus or something podcasts is the price for that $100 million, I mean, shit, honestly, is it too much of a price to pay? Can you honestly say that you would turn down $100 million for your principles? If you can, you're a better person than I am, or Joe Rogan for that matter. And at the end of the day as well, let me return to that previous point. The only way a conservative person can speak publicly and bring on guests as well publicly is how? To be more valuable than the wokest who will attack him. Again, make absolutely no mistake. The only reason Joe Rogan is still on Spotify and not Neil Young is because Spotify consider him to be more valuable than Neil Young. If Neil Young had said, I'm going to remove all of my music unless you take off this random no-name Spotify person, It would happen like that. In fact, it wouldn't even be a conversation. Neil would send a private email to Spotify saying, "Hey, yeet this guy." And they would send him a flower basket in return with a complimentary rimming and say, "Yes, master, yes, very much." It happens all the time. Hell, I have seen this happen personally to me. Wargaming, for example, the creators of World of Warships, gave me a sponsorship. I did the sponsorship, they watched it, they accepted it, they even praised me for making it, and then GW sent them an email saying, "You can't do that," and they publicly apologized for doing business with such an evil person as Arch. You know, because as I mentioned here, the problem with white boys and all that. This is simply how the world works. And if Joe Rogan didn't take that $100 million payout, he probably wouldn't be on mainstream media right now. He probably would already have been cancelled from YouTube, and he'd probably at best be chilling around on Rumble or alternative media platforms or on his own website. At least now he has a voice to speak up about this. He has the ability to point out that yesterday's misinformation is today's political narrative. And that is worth it. We can stand on our high heels for absolute principles all day, and a couple of years ago I would have been that person who would say that no, we must have principles above all. But after years and years of gatekeeping and bigoted behavior from everyone on the other side of politics, sometimes you gotta bend with the wind and fight fire with fire. Is it a good thing? No. Should we encourage it? Preferably not. But if you're in a war and you're the only one fighting, or excuse me, if the opposition is the only one fighting, you're gonna lose. And that's that. Simple as. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.